Since the start of the 2022 season, Lewis Hamilton has been noted to play a greater role in testing for Mercedes, with his teammate George Russell playing a free role. Because Hamilton has been trying out experimental parts for the team, his last race in Canada was no different and the Briton bagged a podium finish. Now he's seeking a different role. Watch till the end to find out all about Hamilton and his guinea pig role and why he wants out. Lewis Hamilton tested experimental parts once again during the Canadian Grand Prix weekend, something he's been doing since the start of the season, and this time around he was left without sufficient dry running at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Lewis Hamilton is hoping that Mercedes reduce the number of experiments they run on his W13 car during Grand Prix weekends after the team obviously took a step forward in Canada. Hamilton was back on the podium for the first time since the season-opening Bahrain Grand Prix, as he fought his way to a third-place finish with a car he called undriveable during practice. His complaints made the team run yet another experiment on his car in the hope of unlocking some extra performance, and it's worthy to note that Hamilton has regularly volunteered himself as a guinea pig, with Mercedes testing new parts on his car this season. These experiments have often left him to try and catch up to teammate George Russell. Hamilton said as a joke, "Maybe in the second half of the season George can do the experiments." Regardless, the seven-time world champion is hoping that progress in Montreal means fewer experiments and more problem-free track time during practice sessions. He said, "We're just trying to progress as a team. I think we'll be a little more cautious on doing too many experiments, as it really does hinder you through the weekend, especially if you only have FP1 and FP2 in the dry. You don't get an FP3, for example. I think there are lots of learnings from the weekend and improvements that we can make moving forwards. But, we had great pace. It's so nice to see. It's not always been the case with this car." Canada was the first weekend Hamilton had finished ahead of Russell since Bahrain, and the 37-year-old hopes Mercedes will be less extreme in their setup experiments on his car, as he feels being the team's guinea pig has been hindering his weekends, and heading to his home circuit, he hopes to put up a fierce challenge. Hamilton believes his result in Canada afforded him enough courage that the Silver Arrows could claw the gap back to Red Bull and Ferrari on the fast-flowing Silverstone circuit at the weekend's British Grand Prix. He notes, "I think we're better in medium and high-speed corners probably than we are in the low-speed corners, but we have bouncing, so I don't know how it's going to be through Copse and all those places." The 1996 world champion Damon Hill suggests there is a glimmer of hope for Mercedes, that they are finally getting direction after the Canadian GP weekend. He said, "I think if you actually look at the race pace, they're still a bit of a way off. They sometimes show pace in the race, then you don't know how much faster Max Verstappen can go if he had to, and typically they tend to try and manage their tyres. They don't burn out their car as fast as they can unless they have to, so I would say Mercedes still have a chunk of time to find to be serious contenders, but clearly a very happy Lewis Hamilton, putting on a brave face after what has been a very difficult year after losing out on a possible 8th title last year. There was a little bit of a suggestion that they, Mercedes, were complaining because they were suffering more than anybody, but it does seem there are more noises coming from the drivers and other teams, and also the FIA, who've been monitoring the vertical acceleration that these guys are subjected to. That means the amount of upwards and downwards movement, and also bottoming because the cars are now whacking the ground. The problem is, could this have a long-term effect? Similarly, in other sports like rugby, we've looked at how the athlete can be affected later in life. We don't want to injure the driver, so they're taking it very seriously. Lewis has made some comments to the effect that he could have crashed in places like Baku, but clearly you always temper the quotes from the drivers because you wonder whether or not they're over-egging the pudding to try and make some other advantage, but you can see the data is now recorded in the cockpit, so you can see whether the drivers are telling the truth or not. We don't know the long-term effect of whether the spine gets injured, the neck gets injured, or even the brain, and so it's a bit of an imponderable at the moment. Certainly, when I was racing, nobody cared. Despite Mercedes' improvement, the team boss Toto Wolff agreed that the team showed some genuine pace. However, he insists there is still work to be done. Toto Wolff said the team had raised the ride height on its cars to make them more drivable and eliminate the porpoising effect that has bogged down Hamilton and Russell all season. Wolff said, "You can see at the hairpin they put in new asphalt so we suffer less from the stiffness of the car, which is the main problem. But before the safety car came out at the end, we were actually quicker than Carlos Sainz and Verstappen, but you're picking out a few laps and saying, 'Yeah, we're back,' but I don't think that's the case here. We just need to keep working. We just need to develop the car in a different window that we had. We had it really low on the ground, but clearly that doesn't function, so I think we have a development direction. We didn't get it right in many areas, but we own the problem and we need to fix it." Looking ahead to Silverstone, Wolff added, "If we're able to run the car low, then we can be competitive. But after Barcelona, we've been cheering we're back in the championship fight, so let's see." Hamilton now seems set on making his team deliver him a car capable of fighting for race wins in time. During the final laps in Montreal, the 37-year-old for a moment thought his request had been granted as he prepared for a shootout with Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz. But the W13 is still lacking the pace to truly challenge the front-runners, although Silverstone is expected to be a track more suited to the Mercedes' strengths. He said, "Moving on to Silverstone and such an important race for us and for me, I really just want to be in a battle with these guys. At the end of the race in Canada, when the safety car came in and we started again, I was hoping that I could be in the fight. The dream was that I could keep in that battle with them and find a way, but they were rapid. But we will get there." With the stance that Mercedes need to be cautious about future experiments with their cars, Hamilton hopes the team can turn over their horrid season and clinch back their constructors' title when they unlock the strengths of the W13. Between that and eradicating porpoising, the team has had to experiment race in and race out, leaving Hamilton unimpressed with the handling of his car after the practices in Montreal. Hamilton is still sitting at 6th position in the Drivers' Championship with 77 points. Back in 1967, Jim Clark won his 5th British Grand Prix, setting a record until Hamilton arrived. Last year, the Briton bagged his 8th British Grand Prix win, setting a record that could be yet broken later in the weekend. The Mercedes driver's 2019 win moved him ahead of Jim Clark, and he's not stopped since, winning all races since then to clock up 8 British Grand Prix victories. From his first win as a 23-year-old in 2008 to his latest triumph last year, the sequence of success tells the story of the most successful Formula One driver of all time. As he grew in confidence and experience, demonstrating crushing racecraft, sensational speed, and introducing new celebrations that bring fans closer to the post-race party. Heading into Silverstone at the next race weekend, Hamilton and his Mercedes team will be looking for yet another win, despite the inconsistencies they face. Given that Hamilton is done with his team experiments and trials, and if his team can find the right balance for their car, they could put up a great challenge at the driver's home track. Needless to say, Ferrari on the other hand lost their home country Grand Prix, but the same cannot be said for Mercedes and Hamilton. The record they hold in Silverstone could be crushed if they don't manage to make the right constructions for their W13. If you enjoyed the video, like and share the video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe and confirm by ringing the notifications bell.